everyone, and welcome to History and Beyond, where we uncover the stories that textbooks leave out. Subscribe now, and let's get into today's video.
We often hear about these massive empires in history, seemingly unstoppable forces that just rolled over everyone in their path.
Yeah, like the Spanish Empire. You think of them as this dominant power, especially back in the day.
What if I told you there was a time in history when a group of indigenous people completely defeated the mighty Spanish Empire and drove them out of their land?
Wait, really? I can't say I've ever heard that story. Where was this?
This isn't a myth. It's the real story of the Pueblo Revolt. Now let's get into the video for more details.
The story of the Pueblo Revolt is one of the most remarkable and underappreciated tales of defiance in the history of North America. It's a story not of conquest, but of a brilliant and successful rebellion. We've all been taught about the European empires that conquered vast lands, but what if I told you there was a time a unified indigenous alliance kicked a European empire out of North America for an entire decade? In 1680, the Pueblo people did just that, defying Spanish rule in a stunning revolt that changed the course of history. Now, let's get into the details. A century of suppression. For nearly a century, the Pueblo people of what is now New Mexico lived under the brutal oppression of Spanish colonists. The first Spanish explorers arrived in the 1540s, but it wasn't until the late 1590s that a permanent Spanish colony was established. With it came an oppressive system designed to subjugate the native population. The Spanish, driven by a blend of religious fanaticism and insatiable greed for gold and land, imposed a harsh tribute system demanding corn, cotton, and labor. They used violence and intimidation to maintain control, and the Pueblo people, despite their vast numbers, seemed powerless against the ironclad might of the Spanish military. The most profound injustice was the Spanish campaign to destroy Pueblo culture and religion. Franciscan friars established missions, burning kivas, the sacred ceremonial chambers of the Pueblo, and persecuting spiritual leaders as witches. They forbade traditional dances and ceremonies, forcing the Pueblo to adopt Catholicism. For a people whose lives were deeply intertwined with their spiritual beliefs and rituals, this was not just an act of conquest, it was an existential attack. The Pueblo were a spiritual people, deeply connected to their land and traditions, and their spiritual identity was now a target. Despite the outward appearance of compliance, resentment, and a deep yearning for freedom simmered beneath the surface. A man, a vision, and a rebellion. The seeds of the Great Rebellion were sown in the years leading up to 1680. Drought and famine swept through the region, intensifying the suffering caused by Spanish exploitation. Adding to the misery, a series of devastating epidemics introduced by the Europeans ravaged the Pueblo population. For many, this was a sign that the old ways were being punished and that the foreign gods had failed them. It was during this period of despair that a man named Pope, a respected religious leader from the Owinge Pueblo, emerged as a beacon of resistance. Pope was an influential spiritual figure who had been imprisoned and flogged by the Spanish for his continued practice of traditional rituals. The punishment only strengthened his resolve. According to Pueblo oral histories, Pope was visited by spirits who instructed him to unite the Pueblo people and drive the Spanish out forever. He traveled secretly among the Pueblos, from the Rio Grande Valley to the most remote mesa tops, forging an unprecedented alliance among diverse communities. The Pueblo people spoke different languages and had their own unique traditions, but they were united by a common enemy and a shared desire for freedom. They communicated their plans in secret, using the anonymity of the vast landscape to avoid detection. They created a simple yet brilliant tool for the rebellion, a knotted cord made of yucca fiber. Each knot represented a day. The last knot was the signal. Messengers carried these cords from Pueblo to Pueblo, a silent and unbreakable promise of a future rebellion. The day the cord was untied, on August 10, 1680, the final knot was untied. The Pueblo people rose up in a coordinated surprise attack against their oppressors. The scale and ferocity of the rebellion caught the Spanish completely off guard. Families, entire missions, and scattered settlements were attacked simultaneously. The Pueblo warriors, fighting with bows and arrows, clubs, and sheer determination, overwhelmed the Spanish soldiers and colonists. They killed over 400 Spanish settlers and 21 Franciscan friars. In the chaos, the surviving Spanish fled to two main locations, the settlement of Isleta and the capital, Santa Fe. Governor Antonio de Otermin, with what remained of his forces, fortified the palace in Santa Fe, but the Pueblo warriors surrounded the city and cut off its water supply. After a short but desperate siege, Otermin realized the situation was hopeless. Under the cover of night, the Spanish survivors abandoned the capital and began a harrowing retreat south to El Paso del Norte. It was a humiliating and total defeat. For the first time in history, an indigenous rebellion had successfully expelled a European empire from its territory. A decade of freedom and renewal. With the Spanish gone, the Pueblo people began the difficult but exhilarating work of rebuilding their world. They immediately set about erasing all traces of Spanish influence. They burned churches, smashed religious icons, and washed themselves with suds from yucca roots to cleanse themselves of the Catholic baptism. Traditional religious practices, ceremonies, and dances were openly revived. The kivas were rebuilt, and the Pueblo people once again controlled their own spiritual and cultural destiny. For the next 12 years, the Pueblo people lived in a state of self-governance. However, this period of independence was not without its challenges. The fragile alliance that had defeated the Spanish began to fray. Internal disputes over leadership and resource distribution created divisions among the Pueblos. Despite this, they had proven that they could, in fact, survive and thrive without their European oppressors. This decade of freedom became a powerful symbol of their strength and enduring cultural identity. The aftermath and enduring legacy. The Spanish, unable to let go of their lost territory, made several attempts to reconquer the land. It wasn't until 1692, under the leadership of Don Diego de Vargas, that they were successful. But the Spanish who returned were not the same as those who had left. The experience of the Pueblo Revolt had taught them a hard lesson. They were forced to negotiate with the Pueblo people, recognizing their land rights and allowing them a degree of religious freedom that was unheard of in other Spanish colonies. The Pueblo Revolt stands as a unique and powerful historical event. It was not just a temporary victory. It was a watershed moment that permanently altered the relationship between the Pueblo people and the Spanish. It forced the Spanish to abandon their most brutal policies and created a cultural and political legacy that endures to this day. The Pueblo Revolt is a story of resilience, defiance, and a powerful reminder that history is not just a story of conquest, but of the people who refused to be conquered. If you found this untold history fascinating, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to discover more hidden stories from around the world. What other forgotten revolts should we cover? Let us know in the comments below.